But first, I must start with some words of advice for the Victorian Premier, Jacinta Allan. Jacinta, no means no. No doesn't mean maybe, it doesn't mean just go ahead and do it anyway. It means no. And Victorians were pretty clear when we told you and Albo no at the referendum. Like every other state in this country, Victorians said no clearly and resoundingly. But Jacinta and the rest of the democracy deniers in state Labor are defying the referendum result and pushing ahead with a permanent and costly legislated Indigenous voice and a costly treaty. The legislated voice will see Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, those who bother to participate in the process, get a vote in electing members for what will be called, or what is called, the First Peoples Assembly. Now, in 2019, only 7% of eligible voters bothered participating, so you had some members elected to the body with fewer than 40 first preference votes. That's a long way from the almost 2.2 million Victorians who voted no in the referendum. Now, here's the good news. The Victorian Liberal Party has been handed a gift here. If it cannot turn the calamitous race politics of the Allan government into a massive win at the state election in November 2026, well, you know what? It should cease to exist. The bad news is it's the Vic Libs, and they'll find a way to stuff it up, and the state will be saddled not just with a permanent Indigenous voice to Parliament, but also a treaty. Yes, a treaty with our own people, around 1% of the state population. This week we saw the output of the Yoorrook Justice Commission and its frankly absurd 100 recommendations, which follow a so-called truth-telling inquiry, the first of its type in Australia. The report is some 455 pages long, and the list of demands are as radical and out of step with the Australian mainstream as the ideology behind the endless grievance mongering. I obviously do not have time here to properly lay out just how toxic and divorced from reality this report is. It starts badly with a foreword written by former Premier Steve Bracks, who opens with this. He said, "Until now, official histories of Australia were written by the colonisers, the oppressors, the victors. The stories about First Peoples' occupation of this land for thousands of years were ignored, distorted and covered up, written out of history, as was the devastating impact of British colonisation from 1788. Say what now? In what state has Steve Bracks been living? Because the black armband view of Australian history has been relentlessly pushed down our throats for decades, including when I was at school a few years ago, just a few years ago. And that message has only intensified further. As for the devastating impact of colonisation, the race-obsessed failed to admit that colonisation, while it brought devastating diseases like smallpox and measles, also came with great positives like modern medicine, housing, technological advances, greater rights and protections for women. And let's face it, colonisation was, of course, inevitable. But the Truth Be Told report, that's what it's called, the Truth Be Told report, concludes that there was a genocide in Victoria and that it was a result of a coordinated plan of different actions aimed at the destruction of the essential foundations of the life of national groups. And it adds that colonial systems are to blame for disparities that exist today. The scars of colonial invasion, its massacres, violence and relentless erasure are not confined to the past. They reside in the present, shaping the lives of First Peoples in Victoria today. From the first footsteps of invaders to the halls of contemporary power, the machinery of dispossession persists. Straight from the report. Of course, among the 100 recommendations is the demand for monetary and other compensation for injustice which has occurred during and as a result of the colonial invasion and occupation of First Peoples territories. Along with demands for funding are demands for greater control, amounting to self-determination. Let's look at just one of these 100 recommendations. Recommendation 3 includes a demand that the Victorian government transfer decision-making, power, authority, control and resources to First Peoples, giving full effect to self-determination in relation to their identity, information, data, traditional ecological knowledge, connection to country, their rights to their lands, waters and resources. in the Victorian health, education and housing systems and across economic and political life. Gosh, what could go wrong? That just sounds fantastic. So you think the Premier would be aghast by these wild recommendations? And I assure you the other 99 are just as entitled and radical. But Jacinta Allan couldn't be happier. She was full of praise. She said, when you listen to people, you get better outcomes. And that's what treaty is all about. I reckon we're up for that as a state, are we? She also said, thank you to the Commission for these historic reports. They shine a light on hard truths and lay the foundation for a better future for all Victorians. A better future for all Victorians, apart from what, the racial division, the small matter of the state going broke. The Victorian Liberals share some of the blame for this ruinous race politics. They initially backed the establishment of the Yoorrook Justice Commission, and incredibly, they backed a treaty until the Voice referendum injected a little dose of reality into proceedings. This is an issue that could turn the state election. But for that to happen, the Vic Libs need to find their spine, they need to find their principles. Opposition leader Brad Batten has said he would not support a treaty or permanent Indigenous voice to Parliament. But the Liberal Party must offer more than that. They must stand strongly against the recommendations of this report and the divisive race politics of the left. If the Liberals want a chance at forming government in 2026, they need to be loudly, unequivocally and unapologetically opposed to the Voice and treaty. No means no.